Everyone fantasizes about being a genius. We all picture it as the ultimate upgrade, right? But the research tells a totally different story. For people with genuinely extremely high IQs, we're talking 145 and above, we see these significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, and this profound sense of loneliness.
And that's a powerful way to frame it. But it's important to be precise here. The research isn't really saying that a high IQ causes suffering. What it's saying is that having this incredibly powerful cognitive system and running it in an environment that just isn't built for it, well, that creates very specific, very predictable psychological costs. These people aren't broken. They're basically running a completely different operating system in a world that doesn't support it.
Exactly. Which brings us to the question that, frankly, nobody really wants to ask. What if extreme intelligence isn't the superpower we all think it is? What if, for the handful of people who actually have it, it feels a lot closer to a life sentence? Okay, so to really unpack that life sentence idea, we have to start with this foundational paradox. The mind of someone with an extremely high IQ isn't just a faster version of a typical brain. You have to think of it as running on a completely different operating system for reality itself. Yeah, and psychologists have mapped this out. They call it an inverted U relationship. See, up to an IQ of about 120, more intelligence pretty much correlates with all the good stuff. Better health, higher income, you name it. But after that point, the benefits just level off. And then, at the extreme end, we're talking above 145, that curve actually starts to dip. That's where these specific negative outcomes start popping up. And the scientific framework for understanding this, it's amazing. It comes from Kazimir Dombrowski's concept of overexcitability. What he found was that gifted individuals literally have a fundamentally different nervous system. So they don't just think faster, they experience the entire world at a higher amplitude. Emotions are felt more intensely. Sensory inputs, like sounds or the texture of fabric, are sharper. And that intellectual curiosity, it becomes this insatiable hunger. It's like the volume knob on reality is turned all the way up. And that, right there, is the core difference we need to get. It's not about being a faster computer running the same program. It's a different operating system, period. A faster computer, it just sees one path to a solution, but it gets there quicker. The high IQ mind, it sees 10 paths all at once, and each one is layered with ethical dilemmas, emotional consequences, and conceptual connections. In a lot of real-world situations, that is not an advantage, it's just a profound source of exhaustion. So this internal operating system, it inevitably leads to a huge external consequence. And that is a profound, almost structurally inevitable loneliness. And I'm not just talking about a feeling here. This is a mathematical reality. So think about this. A person with an IQ of 145 or higher, they share their basic cognitive range with about 1 in every 1,000 people. That's not a metaphor. That is the actual statistical blueprint for intellectual isolation. That's exactly right. This isn't about someone just being socially awkward. It's a demographic certainty. Now, factor in things like geography, age, shared values. The number of people a person with a 145 IQ could realistically meet who process the world at a remotely comparable level is practically zero. You could have 100 conversations in a day and feel at the end of every single one that nobody actually met you where you live. So how do they survive socially? They have to engage in something called intellectual code switching. It's this constant, completely invisible work of translating their actual thoughts into a simplified version for everyone else. They have to consciously slow down their reasoning, leave out all the complexity. They're essentially performing a version of themselves that can fit into the room, and it is psychologically exhausting. Which, of course, leads to this really disorienting question. I mean, if your authentic self has been translated for public consumption for decades, what happens to that authentic self? Who are you when the performance finally stops? The scary part is, for many of them, they're no longer sure. And this brings us right back to that internal experience, to this relentless engine inside their heads that drives the whole performance. It's an incredible tool, for sure, great for problem solving, but it can also be a source of constant torment because you simply cannot turn it off. This engine is what creates that well-documented link between high IQ and anxiety. The very same ability that lets them rapidly generate scenarios and anticipate consequences, it becomes this catastrophizing engine of extraordinary precision. When they're faced with any kind of uncertainty, their brain doesn't just wait around. It involuntarily generates a full details matrix of every possible way things could go wrong. And this is the cruelest irony of all. It's not irrational anxiety, it is hyper-rational anxiety. Standard therapy often involves challenging distorted thoughts. Well, that often completely fails for these individuals because their catastrophic thoughts,
They aren't distorted. They're logically sound and entirely plausible. Their own intelligence has built a compelling, high-resolution, ironclad case for their own fear.
Now, the flip side of this overactive engine is what happens when it's starved of interesting input. And chronic understimulation isn't just being bored, it's psychologically corrosive. Most environments, jobs, schools, even casual conversations, they just don't offer the level of complexity needed to actually engage their brain. And when that brain can't find worthy input from the outside, it turns on itself. It starts generating endless rumination and distress just to have something to process.
Okay, so this brings us to the final, and maybe the most frustrating, paradox of them all. With all of this cognitive horsepower, why does it so often coexist with significant underachievement? It is a baffling pattern. Even Lewis Terman's famous decades-long study of high IQ individuals couldn't really explain it.
Well, it turns out it's often not a failure of intelligence, it's a conflict with it. They can see the gap between their ideal vision of a project and their actual work so clearly that it becomes paralyzing. Their deep curiosity pushes them into so many fields that they resist the pressure to just specialize in one. And because they learn new concepts so effortlessly, they often totally underestimate the gritty, real-world obstacles of actually getting something done. So all that potential, it often remains just that, potential.
And this all ties into this bizarre imposter paradox. You've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where incompetence can breed overconfidence? Well, this is the opposite. Extreme intelligence can breed a profound sense of humility. Why? Because the more they know, the more vividly they can see the vast, enormous territory of what they don't know. And from the inside, that feeling is indistinguishable from feeling like a total fraud.
So, what's the solution here? It is definitely not more praise. It's not being told over and over that they're smart. The crucial thing, the thing they so rarely get, is having their emotional and intellectual complexity acknowledged, not treated like a problem to be solved or pathologized. They need permission to be uncertain, and they need peers who can genuinely challenge them. They really just need someone to say, "Wow, tell me more about what you're seeing."
Because ultimately, the antidote isn't intellectual. It's deeply human. The gift of a high IQ can only truly function as a gift and not a crushing burden if it's met with a rare, almost irreplaceable experience. The feeling of being truly known. To just be seen in the full, unfiltered complexity of what it actually means to live with that kind of mind by at least one other person. That connection, that's what they spend their entire lives searching for.